7-6.
Yeah, I got it.
Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning. Sorry, a little delayed here, but we're back.
No worries.
Oh, that,
Joshua, would you please explain to
Recording in progress.
that we have a number of monastics missing this morning because of a program that's going on, including Venerable Children. She's not here this morning, but the rest of us are here and really looking forward to the teaching. Thank you.
oh, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. I need chatsang pay to my song. Chachi like a shendachi cheka chin.
Oh yeah, okay, Jim. Good.
That's okay, not a problem.
Oh. 这个年头了，Jim.
Yeah, they'll be able to watch it, but in the archived edition.
Good morning, Genrin Rinpoche, Tashi Delay. Thank you for these precious teachings on the precious Garland. And we've been very fortunate to have Dr. Tenzin Bhuchung translating for us these past 3 weeks in Katrina's absence. So thank you so much for your very clear translations. And welcome to all our online participants. We're happy you can join us. And since this is Tenzin's last translation for us, you'll find information in the chat box about how to make an offering of gratitude for his translations. So the link for the prayers is also in the chat box, and we'll begin with those now.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, oneness gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be attained, teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With a supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
뭐야? 뭐야? 다음 주 가서. 내가 조지 반대 어디서 송래로. 그리고 천대입니다. 말을 가서. 천대 윤통사. 천대 윤통 시제 넘버 망사. 천대 윤통도写와 시제 넘버 망. 세장 지점 메시메. 제가 제버저 때도 나한테 체제에 된대게요 말아. 요 세장 지점 메시베. 낭배 출라 오만을 받았어. 낭바도 추다 오만이 때셔는 그 오만의 예체제 통제 추디 샤샤고 있어라. 예체 두고 있어라. 낭배 출라 오만을 받았어. 랑기 더바 당도 롱샤하서. 어디 인데고 지다고 잠불이나 시리 마부여를 시고야 마부여를 장고야 마부여라 개바잖아. 따이나 소속은 더바 가리나 쪼데 가리나 디디 장고를 마도 그 강가 장사에 메스고란 나요 말아. 어디 인데 천년도 시제는 봐마. 세세선 지산 메시베 낭배 출라 오만을 받아 랑기 더바 당도 롱샤하서. 어디지 람나야.
So we begin with a verse from Atisha, who wrote that this life is extremely short, and also the objects of knowledge is so vast, and And moreover, the lifespan is uncertain, and therefore, death can come any time. And since that is the case, that one should extract the essence or engage in what is most meaningful, like a goose that extracts milk from the water, leaving the water and extracting what is really the essence of the milk. And similarly, since the objects of knowledge that we can actually engage with is so vast, we should likewise in this very short lifespan, engage with what is most meaningful, what is very the essential nectar-like.
오야 디 당가라서 쳐본데지 소소소 삼다 이거라 근데 또 늦게와 심마들이야 하다미 최주베 땡겨버리지 토야 되와 데베소 어디 인디고 대체도 니리 메세 나리야 니시한테 저 방에다 펜버트에 돈다 기부 총을 값을 쉐베 니리 메세 나리야 니시한테 저 방에다 펜버트에 삼르다 니 잠바다 뉴질라 소보 검제 뒤소체 아니 데이터를 아니 기분 중에 일상을 코알랑 예반 중에다 다음에 뭐 동번이 고매다 기부 침부 삼로래 로장에 두상 야고요도 단대 버조데 니리 메제나라 미기 주바 교화주 대주주에도야 니리 메제나랴 소소소소 지샤다체 디야게도 이 데이터를 교화치마 준바를 땡주미도 주네 아니 기분 중이다 기부 챔ber 람도서라 로그인섬 대체도 단단해네 코알랑 예반 중에다 지와 동반이도 장주심에서 바꾸면 근데 또 주체한테 소치오라 랑근데가 당도라네 어디랑해라 야들
So similarly, what is the most essential for us in terms of what we can do is on a day-to-day basis engage in practices that are prescribed for the persons of the three scopes, right? Because all practices can be incorporated into any of these practices that can be described as practices pertaining to the persons. So, for example, with regard to the person of small scope, which is not just kind of isolated for the person of small scope, but this is also in common with other scopes as well. So this becomes the foundation. So therefore, like refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions, engaging in activities, body, speech, and mind that benefit other sentient beings on a day-to-day basis by basically being mindful or being conscientious on a daily basis, like almost like counting at the end of the day how many virtuous kind of actions that you have done for the day and how many non-virtuous actions you have done for the day and so forth, almost keeping an account. So this is how we practice mindfulness or conscientiousness. And then on top of this fundamental moral ethics of refraining from harming others and engaging in activities to benefit others, then we also kind of reflect on renunciation, the unsatisfactory nature of samsara or conditioned existence, and what the means to gain freedom from samsara or transcend it. And that is basically through reflecting on the teachings of emptiness and so forth, which is basically kind of the fundamental practice pertaining to the person of middle scope. And then you also, based on these two kind of foundations, also reflect on bodhicitta and so forth, which is basically all the teachings pertaining to the person of greater scope or great scope.
뭐야 대도 다던다 저치 말라다 메고 반지 토야 땡케를 시켜오라 뒤인데고 니리 메제나리아 기부 총을 남라로 장제 되니까 소래 예송 비통에 삼매다 떠서 대소리 때문에 Any Kibudingi, Ladami, Koma, Tovelia, Kibudingi, Lam Titishi Samata, Rawakaji Samtana Samta. Te Chiliane, Kibudingi, Lam Tito Samata, Kibuchimbu Lam de Samata, Chagjan Chagjanjiko, Nirimanyu Karina, Chagjan Samata, we met the Koranalia, Umdi Cherry, never Cherry, the Wiara, or Te Induta, or Te Samata Guramato, Namsada, Komsar, Chicheda. But Tower Gully Medara Shibichi Chaya Samta Yomara, Tilela Yomara, and Yurum Bukum Yongoro Namsanti Nimashara Membasarana Shisha Toba Kavachi Omardo. Karesana Midicho Telanga Combusha Chera. Tinjo Dishine Saba Soku Ashira, or the Indica Soda. Kille Samla Chajan Tagina, and the Magic Coronale. Ke samle de shuk cher de ba cher pacha shavi ora sabin shavi ora shitsu ora te pacha kaje ne shavi ne te de ora namsa to ba ki shivje temata to re si omara kongi ne ne ko chin jwa dwa de gara za ha ko e ora samle jwa dwa o ti so za kar so de de je samle ta ko de ma to namsa da to ba ri ke ne o shivje yo samle ta shivje be che Any Paruchi K. Medu some town say at the Yangayora. You must love Jashim with Ati Abundua. Niri Sajam Metin some Nimakasha, Chibu some Kalash Martin Besses, some of the Kaleka Bilesera. Shumatan Quebec Commander, Yamli Chevada, Namsa Kebada, Tomajuli Kega, Samutana Segura. Shumatan Quebec Commander. Tendre de la Chia Meungas, or Tipe, outside Sadasher, take on the Nation of Century Omara. So, but Chui Junshi Tenshi answer. Chui Juna Shukokalias and Mad Gumachevich Mad Drochona, and a new time Ogura. Or this some Shabura, yeah, or this Lana.
So basically, we have to generate some sort of certainty or confidence that we will not take rebirth in lower realms in the next life, because if we do, then we lose the foundation for any kind of higher practices, right? So that should be our first spiritual kind of objective, is to engage in actions that ensure us rebirth in higher rebirths in future lifetimes. And so that is basically, for that we have to reflect on the causal conditions that give rise to higher rebirth. And that is basically on the teachings of refraining from the 10 non-virtuous actions. So on a day-to-day basis, we reflect on that. It is very important to do that, right? Are we consciously, intentionally refraining from killing, from stealing, from all of that, right? And so that one sort of practice that we should do every day, a kind of living an intentionally ethical modern life, one that is basically defined by refraining from negative actions. And then based on that, then we reflect also on a day-to-day basis, teachings pertaining to the personal middle scope. They basically meditation on renunciation and emptiness and so forth. And then also on that ground, we should also reflect on not just achieving liberation or nirvana for oneself, but for all other sentient beings through training in bodhicitta and so forth. But what is most important here is basically to do this practice on a daily basis, on a sustained basis. The trick here is to do it in a sustained manner on a daily basis. It is never the case that realization happens suddenly. We kind of sort of expect that sometimes. We engage in a few days of serious kind of practice, and then we kind of expect for some sort of sudden, transformation of inner realization, right? That is never the case. And that is because even though we may have glimpses or insight into all of these spiritual practices, including emptiness and so forth, our conditioning from many previous lifetimes is so strong that if we were to measure our kind of virtuous states of mind and wholesome states of mind and their strength and the strength of our habitual negative tendencies, the strength of our habitual negative tendency far kind of outweigh our positive kind of thoughts and positive potentialities, right? So therefore, continuity is extremely important. Sustained practice on a daily basis, kind of what we call as kind of guided meditation through all these kind of teachings pertaining to the person of three scopes on a daily basis is very important, because only then we can basically change, fundamentally transform our negative tendencies and kind of overpower them with wholesome tendencies or wholesome positive thoughts and potentialities through such sustained practice. So that is very important. Some scholars thus mentioned this, this particular verse. For some people, when they pursue kind of spiritual practice or any kind of field of knowledge, they say even by forgetting to eat on a day-to-day, even by forgetting to eat for the day, they engage in this kind of extreme effort to achieve something, right? And they expect that as soon as they engage in this kind of endeavor, they expect to become a scholar or expert in that field, right? And he says that nothing whatsoever is achieved by such approach or by such person, and so therefore one should engage in an effort that is sustained like the continuum of a river.
Mete samluta society church of Katrina samluta. O tamadela dire yabu chunso kewate ti trube chunso. Pacha sha tusun tabo tamje kimbotobe. Ene karsoda. Mihibe member of Karisena Lopton Chen Chishena member Serso some Tabe Shitsu some Sanji Kubanto Niva Sha Tusun some Kawakum. O Tendation Kichenane Chili Sosu Kawasagi what the church you what a Tendre Samus Legua. O Ten Sosu Kawala Chesu Irache, Shanji Kawala Chesu Irache. Tendrechenane church you what a Samus Juan Redisra. That the Nawas Mavison, Tanga, the church, Karchigina Hamo, Chimake, the Chumas, Toban, Kimasuke, Chumas, or some sandwich. Didn't meet and game my boy Gudwa. Oh, this on that. Didn't remember. Oh, that on the Kibuchung and drink the Chimbu Lamlaya, nearing the Machina, Lochangi in some. Oh, this I ate on the Lia, Umashigaba, Umari, Umaranji Chunga, Sobat in the Capsule. They told you, Topson, but that's all. Tebache, Sambache, Combache, Tartu was Sanji Comatone, Simpia Tamjega to Nebe, Gercoshe, and they couldn't you consult him to a chavinism. Oh, teacher to Tandanani, Granarina say, you never in a culative chivinism, and the Gunu set on the Samba shoes, how to do it.
So therefore, on a day-to-day basis, when we should reflect at the end of the day, we should reflect on what we have done for the day, all the wholesome positive actions that one has engaged, and then like cultivate kind of joy in that, or rejoicing in one's virtue and the virtue of others as well, of course. And also like kind of generate kind of regret and compassion for the negative actions that we have done for the day, and then basically review one's like activities for the day, so that we rejoice on all the activities, all the spiritual practices, like refraining from the non-virtuous actions that ensures us rebirth in higher lives. and if we have done that, we rejoice in that. And if we have reflected on emptiness and based on renunciation and so forth, then like we have basically sowed the seed for liberation. And then if we have engaged in actions or spiritual practices inspired by bodhicitta, then we have like laid the foundation for our eventual enlightenment, right? So therefore, then at the end of the day, it's very important to generate joy or rejoice in all of these actions, right? And rejoicing in one's own virtuous actions and rejoicing in the virtuous actions of others, because rejoicing plays a key role in encouraging us, right? Inspiring us further on a day-to-day basis. So through these sort of practices, then we can hope to eventually achieve realization and achieve transformation. As I mentioned earlier, realization doesn't happen all of a sudden, instantly, through a couple of days of practice and so forth. So therefore, we should cultivate this intention before engaging with this text, that I'm going to engage in the practices pertaining to the person of three scopes. And in order to do that, like I'm going to reflect on the teachings taught here by Nagarjuna in the precious Garland through studying, through reflecting, and through meditation, so that eventually I'll achieve enlightenment for all other sentient beings. So with this intention, once again, like let us all generate this intention so that we can actually engage with the text.
Oh yeah, that is all.
No.
Oh yeah. Oh dear. Me papa ne ngendo ndo se tere to. Tandi ka she wo de sana. Oh. Tarwa to bala ni sun bebe. Da tangi da de yu to ku de se te she do. Oh tene. Da me papa ne ngendo ndo se. Le junde la so ba te zo kemele te zo me ba ma wa. Yo. Ene chi me ke wa pa ke wa chu tu ba ya. Ichi mengen te zo yena le junde le ichi me ba te le ya. Be su me she ge jena. Ene te ko te pa sa ya te zo ken jeng gu marwa. Kende te ene ngendo le ru de sha da. Yo chi ma te nyo ida tendo la so ba tende chi de sha da. Yo ba ba ne tendo do se ta le junde la so ba. Ichi che le ke wa che na. Jebu te wa da me ke wa che na tu yo. Niri me che na ya ko. Te pa pa ke wa tu be ya. So ya. Sam tang ke deng che. Tende le junde le che ni. Te bun ki tu le chen gen chi na. Yo ba ba ne tendo la da me ke wa le ge sha da. Yanda chi shin sta te shen ba tam de. Thar ba da tam je ke ba da tende te tu go ma ra. Nge so la ma ji she ke wa chim la da me ke wa tu be sam che re se ro. Ta thar ba da tende to ba she ba ya. Ene kar ko se yanda chi shin yo she che. Ni la me te thar ba ri ro she. O ti ene pa be ka sa la so te zo. Thar ba to ba la ka ri che ro se na. Ene ni la me te she. Ta che da ni ga me de ta che ta ni da te yu kon ba le te ne. Ene pa be ka sa to ju ne. Thar ba to ba la ne lu lo ju to ya da ba chi da shin de mu sum do to ne. Yo. Mu sum do to da ta ni da te yu la so ba te mu sum do to. O ta te na shi ki bu chen bu cha ne cha ju gu sem ke. Te de che ne ta ro tam ji chi bu to bu re se. Ta da mi ge chu bu ke wa chu tu be te sam de la chop shi che yo ma re te chi ma. Ta ba tam ji che bu tu ji ge ten che ba chen ke chu sam ji re se. Ta ti to li ya ne ko me ka re se na. Ki bu de de che be lam to su re ya. Dong ban ye de cha ju sem la so ba kom ko re se do. O ti che bi.
So we're going to start with verse number 57. And so I'm going to read it first. The nihilist goes to a lower rebirth. The essentialist attains a upper rebirth. but through knowing reality as it is, not relying on the two extremes, one is liberated. So therefore, talking about that in order to achieve liberation and complete enlightenment, one has to understand the view of the middle way that is free from the two extremes, extreme of eternalism and extreme of nihilism, right? So one extreme that we can fall is basically a nihilistic extreme, which basically says that there is no rebirth, there is no causality, and so forth, right? And so if we entertain such a nihilistic view, then the result is that we will not bother to observe karma, will not bother to live an ethical life. And due to that, the effect is that one takes rebirth in lower realms. But the other extreme, but the better extreme is entertaining an eternalistic view. Not only that things exist, not only that karma exists, causality exists, but they exist inherently, right? And so with such an approach to reality, the individual observes karma, observes causality. And due to that, that individual takes rebirth in higher rebirth, right? So even though that is good in itself, it says that in order to achieve the state of liberation, based on which one can then achieve complete enlightenment through practice of bodhicitta, one has to cultivate the view that is free from both of these extremes. And so that is basically a kind of a urging us that one should not be satisfied with simply practices pertaining to the personal small scope. Also, that is important, refraining from wholesome actions and so forth, negative actions and so forth. But also that, we should basically achieve liberation and complete enlightenment based on that.
Oh yeah, that did it. Yangda Jixin Yongxie Bei, Yangda Jixin Yongxie Bei, Medan Yoba, Mendoba, and it teacher Meba Barjuna, Teacher Yoba Menjus, or that day on Tissigua, Shandagas, all that Usana, Rangshingi Mess doing it, Cheddar Londo Rese. Kena di cheda lundu rangshin ji mes ne meba sigo re ene meba tawa re sem tende pa shenda ngo ma tu tu ta chiru ba tu tu ba ngo ra sem ji ngo ra o te zul pa le so re ti ja do tende ma ne lu to yang da ba chi da wa shin du she ba se yang da chi shin yong she ba se de ne lu to yang da ba chi da wa shin du yong su she so na se ta ni da te u de yong su she so na se rangshin ji ene rangshin ji yo ba ra Nelu kasere yanda chishi yongshebe meda yebar medebasa. Tani date ute chima chishi sheba inasigura. Ine yonsu shebes. Meda yebar medebas. Rangshinki yobade dewi wamare. Sawane mebade dewi wamarwa. Rangshinki mesigur mado mesigur marwa. O ti yosede tene taba tenchi deban juwa tumde yoga mato rashi yosi yoga mato chota tishir meba par junase rashi mes ne meba par jurge yonas eni tanye do yosi le jumde chachi rungwa de yosi tende yosi kelin gora ni yoba bale jurcho doas o ti sonda yota da metal lo se te mari yoba de nganju tongju na shi tembar yoba tina shi samlu tane ko yota reba chachi nebe le chumbe soba kaya yo marusana ne metarwa o kele ama lochi kora mato me rangshi ki me su de chedang lo tinde marusi kora o tinde meto ya chila.
So then we go to verse number 58, and this is basically Nagarjuna's response to an hypothetical question raised by realist, both Buddhist and non-Buddhist, who kind of challenges this middle way philosophy by saying that if you maintain that things do not inherently exist, right, then it amounts to basically entertaining a nihilistic position, right? So this is in response to that. So so Nagarjuna's response here is that by knowing reality as it is, if you assert that, if you assert neither existence nor non-existence, and if entertaining such a view actually is a nihilistic view, why wouldn't you also call it a kind of eternalistic view, right? Because the Madhyamika position is free from both extremes, right? Free from nihilism as well as eternalism, right? Things do not inherently exist, but they do exist at the conventional level as interdependently arising phenomena imputed by the mind, or that appears to the mind. So this is basically Nagarjuna saying that when we say that things do not inherently exist, we don't mean that they don't exist at all. Because we, on the other hand, we also maintain the existence of dependently arising phenomena. That is all that kind of dependently arising phenomena that is imputed by the mind or that appears to the mind. And so therefore, for Madhyamika, if what we are maintaining is that even though things, when we say things do not exist inherently, we meant things do not exist independently from the side of the object, inherently from the side object, right? But nonetheless, we also simultaneously maintain functionality of things, kind of an agent and action, and so that kind of dependently arising kind of causality, we also maintain simultaneously while maintaining that things do not exist. And we meant by do not existing inherently or intrinsically.
Oh yeah, this one. Oh, then did it. Get a maybe switching was one more to love good. Oh, Mama Kira, then get a Yoba so Ranshinji Yoba, Ramuni Yoba, Timber Yoba, and the Tonashi Yoba Telia. This switching good was it. Teaching doing a Tonashi, the mess you are was gora. Did they kira in a car soda? No. Get a Yoba switching way, and it 20 tiene meba lenso que yo ba de skag do as que son da tenda ane que no o me ka sura meba ba tal do de ese meba ma chol do de lemba si ti kan do ti chol do de ser sira meba ma chol do de ese sam go re ti sigora ta tele pa le ja to o ma tin de ra lo o ti shi meba sun chwe yo ba chi ma tin de ne nga zu o ma ba ge Tenzin Bhuchung ngōbu chūndegi dewa te chūdang drebu le tene chashi nipe pēne jin drebu jīgiri ese ti kēlingi wāru wāsi wāra chashi rungwa te kēlingi wāra Tenzin drebu ni chūng chashi rungwa tishi meba sūn chūngwe tishi meba sūn chūngwe chashi nipa te yo mara se yo mara te sūn chani Tenzin drebu ni chūngwa la chawa chini wātu pēne drewa te yore chūndegi namsha yore se yora tene yoba baya chichi mele kēranga tu Uma body yoga by chore, meba mare yoga by chore, teach all the time, or teach all the do was lembas. Oh, this is I think yeah. What is
So then verse number 59, again, kind of a hypothetical question from the realist who agree with Nagarjuna by saying that because you refute existence, right? You refute, you said like things do not exist. because you refute existence through your Madhyamika logic, doesn't that imply that, you are nihilistic? And to this, Nagarjuna responds by saying that if that is the case, we also refute nihilism, because even as we maintain that things do not have intrinsic inherent existence, but we also maintain the existence of conventional phenomena, causally arising mentally imputed phenomena, right? We also maintain the conventional validity of action and agent in a dependently arising manner, right? So because we also maintain that these exist, you could also blame us for being a kind of a eternalistic, as entertaining an eternalistic view.
This one.
No?
Well, Tandeta. I'll shoot those in there. Kanda, yeah. Kanda tenji many to say. Kanda tenji many to say that. Many to Tamichashi, Michiba say. Oh, did it. The Umaba Kanda say, Umaba Subesi Sera. Umaba say, tenji many to say. Umaba de Siwada. Umaba Kanda say, tenji lande meba Sigadon. Lande meba. Need Kelling Marwa. Chicken make mare. Can I love mare, Kelling mare Sura. Kanda. Kanda. Tenji many to Ram Chidane yo mare se. Many to Tamicha, Tamja Kelling Chigmare. And a canet in the Labia mare Sura. Pichuchen and Meba Yesi. Kanango so Labimare, Tamicha yo mare Sigora. Then do the Kanda. Tenji many to Tamichashi, Michibas. Teacher, they do that. That Chanju Tencher Semena, Yanda Chidar, Yanda Chidar Mebar Shea Sedra. Chanju Tencher Setera. That you can see those in a Member Thompson Butcher. And I Cheba Yachina, Legion Yabachi Tada Lobe, or Chanju Tencher Semenasa. Talana maybe Chanjula Soba, then they told me Chedosigora. Chanju se lana maybe Chanjula Soba, then they told me Chedose. And came a little bit Cheba and Yamsulation. Legion Yaba Cheba Lobe, Luigi Kame Temperature. Getting Yaba da Kudilla. About the other. All the Chanju Tension. Oh, that is it. All the Tambu de Tamaniti to dash in the outdoor. Kanda tenji many to Umaba Kanda ki Tunda and the legend de la Soba da Chundegin Deva, Penny de la Soba to Meba, killing you on Marese, Ranshinji Mebas killing you or Madu Meba killing you on Marese. Did I can also can laminate the Yese Logay or Marilla, Damchag or Marese, or teaching like that.
So verse number 60, since they do not actually assert nihilism, nor behave nihilistically. So that is basically Nagarjuna stating that Madhyamikas actually do not say, when they say that things do not inherently exist or things do not intrinsically exist, they do not maintain, therefore, that things do not actually exist, because they do exist conventionally. They do exist as interdependently arising phenomena, because the idea that we do not maintain that things actually do not exist at all is something that we do not actually assert philosophically, nor do we engage in that manner by not like, observing karma and so forth.
뭐야, 다 장주 땡치를 셈매나 대다 지대를 매발 시에서더라. 장주 톱지 때문에 그 어디를 대서도 장주 톱지 때문에 나셔야 돼. 라나 매배 장주 톱에 채도 시고라. 대 람라야 안에 템베스고라. 라나 매배 장주 톱에 채도 대 람라 때는 람 공거라. 템베스. 렌데 신지 말로바 또 베셔세. 렌데 신지 말로바 또 베셔. 장주 톱지 셈매나 장주 톱에서도 될 정비 와라스티 나네 매바바 컨디션 조베레세 기타 지들 매바 셰테 매바 퍼마완데 마레스도 디기도 라나 매베 장주 톱바티 때도 람단 테이블에 서버 친지 말로 또 베셔세 어디도 니케다 렌데 매베 렌데 매냠베 셈비아 매바 예시도 렌데 매냠베 셈비아 매바 예시고라 셈매나 지들 매바 바린데 매바 마레스 장주 토베치도 렌데를 서버 때다를 좀 베세 매바 마레스 좀 비워레셔라 계속자 니테다 우마바 때다 지들 매바 바르 셰바르 셰바르 마레스 매바 마레스 했다다 근데
So furthermore, Nagarjuna counters their argument by saying that, and furthermore, because Madhyamikas actually rely on enlightenment, or they see enlightenment as a kind of achievable goal or foundation. And for that particular purpose, Madhyamikas engage in observance of karma and all the spiritual actions that lead to the resultant for the body and state of enlightenment or body. You cannot maintain, and you cannot assert that we do not actually have a mind that says there is no karma, there is no causality, things don't like this. And so therefore, because they rely on awakening, they do not think as nihilists. So how can they be called nihilists? How can the Madhyamikas be called nihilists when they actually depend on enlightenment and engage in all the actions that lead to the state of enlightenment through observance of karma and so forth. So not through a philosophical position, nor through their actions, Madhyamikas behave as if they are nihilist.
This one. Odan de tujuji da rinyi to de karishe dosena sanje kasa tanya da de uma de sanje timu mai be kecho de ese shunam tembar me ba no na shi tembar me ba ta ya chaji ne te ji de bar so so pen jawa o de sanje timu mai be kecho de ese de she do so lo kan ni de karishe dosena kansa pumburu ma wa yese kansa cheso yobata pumbu temba tuba mawala sobata chiribata nambale yunguru wakende kansa pumbu mawaye jikden changchen utubata changchen bata rikbachen bata rawa ene chirubala sobate sosiwara jikden changchen ututa ene kweme sheti shaka kweme ba chiruba sosura Kumechela kete shise, kete kondulia, kiwa tridase, yemen deba mana trise, tongbani nimi sere labla konje nimi sere tongbani. Ote tongbani te kare me kare ye ta kare sene, tangi de te uti shashin ge yo marese, shashin marese ora. Yemen deba mana trida, tilenje yung marese, gugu marese, shing marese ora. Tichir sanje nam jene,
So then verse number 61 and 62, basically describes how the middle way that is free from the two extremes, extreme of eternalism, nihilism, is a unique feature of the Madhyamikas. So in order to establish this, verse number 61 begins by saying, as the worldly philosophers, and then like such as the Sankhyas and the Vaisheshikas and Jains, right? As whether they asked with who those who assert the real existence of person and aggregates, whether they maintain kind of a position that is free from both existence and non-existence. And the implication here is that, some of them say, they have their own concept of the absolute and so forth, that they say is actually, free from all elaborations and so forth, right? But ask them, whether they actually maintain a view that is free from both two extremes. Because like Madhyamikas, even when they maintain that things do not inherently exist, it's like an illusion, they do not inherently exist, but nonetheless, simultaneously, they were able to assert the functionality of causality, the viability and the validity of action and agent and so forth, right? Ask that question to them. So even though they might actually give a kind of a verbal kind of commitment, they will not be able to kind of defend that thesis.
Oh yeah. That is my son do that. Transition by the season is saying set in the killing go that transition by the Sigora. And the person there. Just to want you should be true better, but who took was at it. Oh, very sobiness can achieve that. This is correct killing goes now repeating but again. Oh, Kene sheja chigi tandu soba chida patato sheja chigi tandu la soba tizo kene isi chigu bala soba o tizo ke sunzi nyi dongu seri chi lab lab do konzo nimi ne shido o tizo kanga sheba de takba dangwa bo o tende kele giru mato trete de kele shingba reshi o ti wone shigdo tizo reje de she mo che go do re o chiribe doba tili.
So there's a mention of three real schools here: the Samkhyas, the Vaisheshkas, and Jains. We're not going to delve into the philosophical positions of these three schools here, but just to summarize, the Samkhyas actually maintain that all objects of knowledge can be categorized into 25 categories or 25 objects of knowledge. Then the Vaisheshkas, they're actually followers of Shiva, and they will eventually maintain the real existence of external phenomena outside the mind that actually exist, inherently exist. And then the Jains, they do kind of commit to a position of a kind of a philosophical position that is free from subject-object dualism, right? Which sounds similar, but when you kind of analyze, then they actually maintain a consciousness that is permanent, that intrinsically exists, that is eternal, that is free from subject-object dualism. So therefore, they are not really kind of free from subject-object dualism in that sense.
뭐 저기라 다 장제바도 저 있는 거야 카르시니 용거도 장제 라메바다 라제바셔르지 디치단 고 장제바데 치토올 때는 강거 주변시거라 tambu tambu de chi zo sen ge chi ti pembo de si gara de trube su che ina te ge changma ne ki ge yo che ra o ti la ne che ba bu wong ju la so ga lo yo ko ma re se wong ju ke ma lu je ko ran kang yang ge yong ge ke len ge chi do ya ti le nyam do yang che ba bu wong ju ge ro ba che ko be su che wong ju ba se che yong ge do o ti de tu sama 당부 정부 데카레스인데 이제 치소한테 그래서라 뱀부 지와래 되게 정말 지와래서 진짜 용서지 들어야는 진행 제바 보고 막고 다친데 친구다 디시아시는 정말
With regard to the Sankhya school, actually quite a sophisticated philosophical school, they have two kind of sub branches. One maintain a creator god in the form of Shiva, and one actually the original one. Actually, they are not theistic. They do not actually resist the existence of a creator god. But fundamentally, their position maintains that the source of every phenomena in the world is what they call as primal matter, which is basically inanimate, and everything in the universe is basically emanations of that primal matter. And those who actually believe in the creator God is that for that primal matter to be activated, they need to be a creator God, and God activates primal matter, and through the emanations, the universe is formed.
de kande se do sana to tene kare shine drome ome se do jine ji pungbu de se do shi song se chi go ra dondo ane ka so re dondo rang shin ji tu ba yo ba ma re sha re shin se wo de le tambu de chi go ma de ji den dondo chi shi yu tam se de ji den ge ro ane pungbu la so ba wa de so ma de rangun에 두 같이 시위때 요 말에 서리야. 제가래서네 시내 로메 오메 신식도 풍부대 장신지 지유대 매버타서라. 장신지 요나 뒤숨도 아니 대바다 마음바다대 뒤숨요라. 뒤숨도 장신지 바네 고 발레테 내가 말했으거라. 시내 로메 오메 신식 시그네 또 대선 시거란 대바테 시그네 도아 메시에세 시그도 현다줄 터더도 진짜게고 말해시거라 신내 도메 깨운디서 현다진의 술렘네 술게요 텐겐도 진짜게고 말해서라 시그네 도메 오메체스 깨지간에 메네바 다다와데 코란 깨그레데 깨지시냐 만주르 치코네요 말해서 깨지시대 안에 남자 시도라 교단 깽게 단다 깨고라 단남벨 로체나 미선보라 제나다 신동다 메도드 제나다 선보지 때에 사실면은 중화다 대속에 단다 야코로 버체제 때고요라 내가 라조 이나 고 단다 르기 우당에다 나자다 지강게 우당에다 강게 단다 야 선보지 대교라 마도 지 선셔버지 라와선 대교요 마라 어디서도 이게 시내 도메 오메시 계지 장내에 내봐스 뒤숨을 잔시도 기다려 뒤숨 대베다 이제 대도 지여 담서 뒤숨도 내 대바다 다다 마음배 수기 랑문에 주바 템바 주바 지시여데 뭐부카야 요 말레스 때네 딱 받zam도 요 아레스 템바 주바 요 말레스 어디 뒤숨을 잔시도 근데서는 당신이 주변 뭐 교와 지시도 요 말해서라 대연안에 두숨을 딱 제시네 지여고래 요 말해서 대바디 신내니 신다들 터드게 랑문에 요나 그 랑문에 신내는 그 신다들 랑문에 터드르지 거고요라 요 말아 깨와데 야기는 랑문에 요나 그 깨니 신다지네 요네 깨고야를 지워라 Tigo Marwa. Tata never the trouble is never take you yanky by nene. Those gain a conjunction road rash at Mato, your marathon, or to the sector. Do some to nego shinero. Shineka shouldn't draw a mares. Give a take sendation and one year your mares. And Tata was the Kiji ranking all Tambuna Shini, but the Tata never see Omar could choosing Saba Kekuara. Do some to never tell it. Tanging the Sonda, or Tizukaga, Ranshin to your Marese. The Ranshin to Bayona, do some over the Kiwaina. Some did and some good Sarah. Over the Jinanga, you would as a kid now, Koran to time bestors, some code or chita. Taya tell game with us, Koran Koran time bestors. To them or Shanky cigar, Koran, you do so yours. You always tell you and any so time go rest to Koran, only you go to some Giora. To get in this on a lower to Chuma de some coat of your mara. Koran Ranshin, Deji, you and turn to do some debut, you said, Ramune Kiora, Sarah. Nga zo salu jangpa doka siti songtwa saje ki kamba meba sondu za kemlo zole salu jangpa la sines salu de jangpa dongo se kede wara tele sine ene ko tenjin de bar jware se ti sonde gyudan kenge kota da ya ke gura tanto sonde ki wara ti cheni ki wara ma do shenda cheba bo che da rangwen da rangshin ki tuya chiwa mara kyujin so onde kono lubur du ya tan yo gura ba o ti rangshin ki tuwa ka songu tuwa ya ten de chida.
So then from verse number 63, it begins to, Nagarjuna begins to explain the emptiness or the lack of inherent existence of phenomena. And phenomena here, particularly the most important phenomena is our own psychophysical aggregates, because, it's kind of related to how we generate aversion and craving and karma and so forth. And so therefore, the thesis here is that the world here does not inherently exist. The world means the world of psychophysical aggregates and all other phenomena world, but particularly the world of the world here refers to the world of psychophysical aggregates. The psychophysical aggregates do not inherently exist, right? Because if they do, then they must inherently exist in terms of 3 times, any of the 3 times, right? They must inherently exist in the past, or they must inherently exist in the present, or they must inherently exist in the future, right? 3 possibilities where they can inherently exist, right? So therefore, this particular verse is to refute the position, a kind of inherent, intrinsic kind of assumption that we have, that aggregates and the phenomenal world inherently exists in 3 times, right? So therefore, when something ceases to exist, we think that, oh, that went somewhere, right? That particular thing went somewhere. It ceased to exist because it went somewhere to the next. It's to its next kind of entity, right? But here the first verse, the line says, the world does not go out of existence. And so so when the translation is a little different here, but when something ceases to exist, it does not go anywhere, right? Or when something arises in the present moment, it is not the case that it came from somewhere. So there is no going and there is no coming, as the expression that we are used to, right? So when something takes kind of birth here, it is not the case that that thing came from somewhere else, right? So therefore, there is no going into the future, no coming from the past, right? And then the next possibility is that, but things must, exist in the present moment, right? Even if briefly, but it must truly exist. And the idea is, the kind of a inherent assumption that we have is that, when we see ourselves breathing, living, or a tree breathing, living, it is actually existing in the present, right? Not knowing that existing simply means a continuous process of arising and ceasing and arising and ceasing, right? So we cannot say that we are actually living in the moment right now, because there is nothing in our psychophysical aggregates stays even briefly in the moment, right? The fact that we are living is actually a complex process, where there are so many kind of factors arising, ceasing, arising, ceasing, including our breath, right? Breathing never kind of, stays briefly even for a moment, right? It's constant. So the process of this continual process creates the illusion of some sort of existing in the present, right? So therefore, this particular verse refutes any kind of claim that phenomena of psychophysical aggregates exist kind of inherently, truly in any of the three times. So therefore, this inherent clinging to some sort of intrinsic existence is very strong, right? So that's why some philosophical schools, they thought that if something exists now, it must come from somewhere else. If something will exist in the future, that something that will exist in the future must somehow exist now. Otherwise, it is as if, like something comes from out of nothing, right? So therefore, some schools like Sangha maintain this absurd philosophical position that the cause and effect are simultaneously present, right? The effect is in its potentiality, right? But they are nonetheless simultaneously present due to this kind of intrinsic clinging to inherent clinging to intrinsic sense of reality. So therefore, in order to explain that everything is in a constant process and causally produced, and our mind is actually imputing the existence, or to the mind, it appears as if there is intrinsically existing phenomena in the three times, but that in fact there is no such thing. The Buddha actually taught the Sudra of dependent origination through the example of rice seedlings, right? A field of rice, and where it seems like that the things are actually existing, but through a dependently existing phenomena, the appearance of growth actually of rice seedlings come to us, but actually there is no such thing. So therefore, Madhyamikas still maintain that due to dependence on many causal factors, that things appear to the conceptual mind as if there is some sort of existence from the side of the object. So that appearance to the mind is what is meant by imputation by the conceptual mind. So therefore, I'm going to read the rest of this particular verse. It does not remain for even an instance. It is a nature beyond three times. So how could it be real? How could the world, how could the psychophysical aggregates be intrinsically real? It is, that is to say.
do so.
No.
Worded. Tongan did it. Kanchi Nika Yanda do Rodan Wanda Nemeba. Teacher Jiden Yangende, Tondo Kebar, Chitabusta, Tunda, Korada Yande Karina, Sigo, the Kebayo Mato. Shotam Jetemba to Matu said they could never some much cheaper Mato. Sanje dan Golden to the Tache to the Tembatu, Shenda to Temba Madungere, or Koa Temba Madu, Tarwa Temba to Vesera. They tie a Mardo. The Tombani so Tende Yon Gudo. Tombani la Sobote to Tendu in say Yora Yang, Kebasu Gudo. The Inako only said Tombani said, Tombani said, Yang Temba to Vachi or Marisha Vera. O Tindi Kanchi Niga Yanda those. Koroda Yangan Deba Niga Yanda Batubati or Maresera, Chibades and Netu Chibades. Kanchi Niga Yanda to Roda Honda Name Bas. Draw Tarbe Lamla draw la soba, call la soba. Don't draw Mambu order, or Tezu Kangasura. Roda on name about. Call a never, National draw never. Tumba Sero, Tarbe Lamla draw Sero. Tomne never said Tezu Kangasum. Oh, Kanjinika Yanda don't draw down on the name bus, never la soba. Call never la soba, on Yanda Tarvala never la soba. Tezu Kanga. Jiden Yang de Tondo Keber Chitable, Jitembe Koada, and then Yang Deba, Jiden Debe, Yang Deba Soba Tezula, Ramon and Tumadu Keber, Chiterio de Yomarese, Chetamje Ranshinji Matu, Ramon and Matubase. Tonda Teta Tombani said, Tonda Chikbar or Kangal, Chikone Kangal Koendisera. Chiterke Tagan Dushin, Sheba Tishin Kula Loy Charge Asudo. Tambo soso samutana ti kodere chiora, soso de carre serchira. Ti pumbunga da neche sa chu melongin chongala soba tezun €2 chobayore. Chobale tene pa tabo mato chige. Chiruba da shenda tubda deba nashi kobe na toba che shu dengeriche. Takwa tirsu tu denge tada te kelenge o maro nambe. Sanko tidu nyongeche yoni yor bako pene dreni tidu nyongeche yodera. O ti indi ko karese, tene tabo samrese, tenjin debar juarese. Taas paasi ming tagre, soso ge soso sobuda tezole tene, o nga tiri tebudu, tiri tebu medu, samso samrese kugra. Chigli pa, segan rona, dhan tambal segan rona, direse, chigli zuzu saske yo mara. Tashi karese, direse, lakwa ni chuje, adinde shashare. Ti tashi rese, taga shajur mado, lakwa tashi di marwa. The membership was your take your mardo. Sakuti Kanga Chibare, Tal Sheba Nashi. Kandine Chizuki Pado, so Charlie Sachu Melong Juada Kanga. The Samari Rene Dare Mara, Juju comes to Sungua, or Tinashi Kibusami Chuma, Mimiluminam Gamanam Shemekundi. The Tesula Shendo Yachi Kora, Tata Palana, Shangobo 7 and Shetendesha Yomara. Tina Nechili Zutu Sache Yomara. Namduda Karina, the Chala Tonda Mabu Jira Tanda Tende. Tina Nechili did his Namdu Zusake Omara. Tana, the members Shanda order legacy and get machine to the Logas, Shandaji order said, take Omara. If the Nimare can't get do it in the Mara or teach it. Then talk about some. Tenzin Bhuchung, then they talk about a chita and the Tezuke. Her word is a legacy, and it takes our Chebeton Shakuyara. The Kangal is Chibara. Really, don't buy your shit that shake when it didn't go over. Shame was it did some shower. Kajiniga Yanda don't draw down the name ever. Teaching Jidan Yang and that Tondo. Kebachitabo, Kebario Mare, Tarwa Tamje Kembani Tamje. Rangune Maduba, Rangshingi Maduba. Rangune Maduba. Kurang wene tsuke yo mare. Kurang mainge mambushil 10 tane, kurang sha kongresati to. Oh, yete.
So then, verse number 64. Verse 64. Ultimately, the world and nirvana do not come into existence, nor do they go out of existence, nor do they remain existent. So the world and the nirvana, from the point of view of ultimate reality, they are exactly the same in terms of having no intrinsic existence, no true arising, no true cessation, no true abidance in terms of past, future, and present. So this is to basically remind us that, when we say that, things do not have inherent existence, some philosophical schools, some individuals, they think that, oh, there are categories of phenomena. Some phenomena are ultimately existent, such as nirvana, such as state of cessation, such as emptiness, right? They must truly exist, right? And other phenomena like table and so forth, they do not inherently exist. They inherently wanted to make this distinction. In fact, we have scholars, Tibetan scholars as well, who maintain that, right? Who maintain that, nirvana does truly exist, emptiness does truly exist, right? So therefore, this is to basically emphasize that from the point of view of ultimate reality, there is no distinction whatsoever between these two, between the world and between nirvana, that they do not inherently exist. They do not inherently exist. And so that's why, in the sutras, we talk about the emptiness of the emptiness, right? To basically eliminate this particular clinging that emptiness must truly exist. So therefore, these kind of mention of emptiness and so forth, right? And so therefore, all phenomena, whether in samsara or in nirvana, they are kind of such that they are conceptually, only as a conceptual label, only as a conceptual imputation based on many parts or many moments, as may be the case, does exist, right? But apart from this conceptual imputation or appearance to the conceptual mind, things do not inherently exist independently from the side of the object themselves. So therefore, if we are able to establish the emptiness of one phenomena, then we can establish the phenomena or establish the emptiness of all phenomena, because it applies to every phenomena of samsara and nirvana. So, for example, usually the easier method to establish emptiness is emptiness of one's own personal self, right? We say, okay, we have a sense of self. Of course, that's undeniably the case. We cannot say that I don't have a sense of not just self, but intrinsically existent self, right? So that is undeniable, right? But then if it is the case that this phenomenological experience of intrinsically existent self is true, then it must be found on the basis of the ground of which we think the self exists, in which we think the self exists, right? Basically in these 5 psychophysical aggregates. So then, when we analyze, we realize that the kind of sense of self that we have is not any of the 5 psychophysical aggregates. It is not it is not a form, it is not the feeling, it is not discrimination, it is not compositional actions, nor is it consciousness, right? So then if none of the basis of designation is the self, then how do we account for the experience of the self? That is the question, right? So if none of the psychophysical aggregates, the only 5 possibilities in which we can say this is the self is not the self, then how do we actually experience self? Self does exist, right? Because we can testify that through our own experience. We have a distinctive sense of self. So if any of the 5 psychophysical aggregates are not the self, then how do we account for a kind of experience of personal self? So according to Nagarjuna, according to Madhyamaka logic, when any of the five psychophysical aggregates appear to the conceptual mind, then we generate we inherently kind of generates a sense of self based on those five psychophysical aggregates. So based on our experience of the aggregates, five psychophysical aggregates, the notion of a self appears, and that appearance of the self is something that appears to the conceptual mind, and that is what we mean by imputed conceptually, imputed by the conceptual mind, right? So therefore, yes, self does exist, not from the side of the objects, not from the psychophysical aggregates, but as something that is conceptually designated, conceptually labeled by our conceptual mind based on any of the five psychophysical aggregates. So it simply means that if we were trying to locate a real self in any of the five psychophysical aggregates, we cannot actually kind of pinpoint to one or point to one and say, hey, this is the self, right? Or mind is the self, or the body is the self, right? So therefore, when we, this is how our convention works. When we look at somebody, hey, this is Tashi, or this is John, right? We like point to his a part of his body, right? Maybe at the hand or something like that, right? This is Tashi. Yeah, it's a conceptual labeling, right? But we really cannot point to the essential of Tashi or essential John in any of the physical parts or in any of the five psychophysical aggregates. So therefore, this is what is kind of also maintained by Nagarjuna. Or this is also taught by Shantideva when he says that, a person is not earth, no water, no fire, no wind, no space, no consciousness, right? A person is conceptual designation based on these aggregates, based on these constituents, right? So therefore, even as in a kind of ultimate exploration for something that inherently exists, we cannot point to a self. The self does not exist, therefore, from the side of the objects, right? But we can't deny the existence of a self. Experience tells us there's a self. Also, the functionality of the self, right? We become sad, we can do things, we experience all sort of feelings, that testifies to the existence of a self. So what is that self? It's a interdependently arising constituents based on which conceptual label of self is labeled or appears to the conceptual mind. So therefore, a kind of the motion of a self appears to the conceptual mind based on the basis of designation. So therefore, based on composition of many aggregates, the conceptual mind categorizes it or labels it as something. So only in that sense things exist. So if we understand the selflessness of phenomena of a person in this sense, we can also infer it to any kind of phenomena, whether in samsara or in nirvana. No.
뭐야, 다시는 걸려서 뭐야. 다들다 두주 리투티네 마치 때네 마 치르바 그 더바 가셔가도 와. 치르벤 더바 가셔가도 와. 다 담부터 가르거도스네. 지타베네 투텐데 딱바 예세. 데 투텐미 딱바다 데 켈렌데 네게지 담부당이 바다 숨바다 치 네바다 때도 요다시 꽌마 용도 와 삼개와라. 대선자 공아 투텐 딱바 켈렌기 테텔레 텐데 대바다 마음바다 깨바다 텐데 깨지가요 말에. 투텐 딱바 예세. 참미 예세. 투텐 딱바 예. 참미 예세. 근데 되게 어려 진짜 받으 시도 딱번 되게 지라 봐라 뭐 담제 진지 제바 켈레베 진지 제바 켈라네 견데도 연구를 해서 고자네 되네 정신지 주베 딱번 켈레 게 스튜던트 때도래 견데도 연구 말했어 대선도 뭐 남이야 내가 다 파악하고 치고라 다 기라 전에 뭐부터도 두전에 다 전부 연구를 전조 연구를 강가 연구라 이제 제도 전부를 고라 뒤치 그러시라 내가 총으로다는 전주제 된데 된다면 돼요라 대수 상무다 파악해서 되더라 그러니까요 뭐 남이야 네 저도 두전도 좋아요라 다 요 말에 스케치 되더라 되게 되는데 걔들 따도 요나네세 요요다 메스티고라 단 요라 요나네세 거라 저니까 뜻에 저니
Türkçe çezere.
아
Türkçe renga de çevon. Düzgün doğru gel doğru wa.
이쪽에는 도서 왔단다
Al lus.
그래 내가 메시지 깨워다 각바양다 니미나
Lus.
또다네 내바다 각바도 칼라시세 럽도 왜
O this lus.
데가 도시나
Lus.
그래 깨워다네 내바다 각바도 돈도랑 신기 좀 요 말해서 각바도 칼라시 진도사래
Lus. No.
그래서 전에 따단데 데르다 데르다 티텐 그네 깨지마 마인베 딱봐 인세거라 티 마인바 타시와라 게데 에네 내가 따도 요나네 요르시 단디세라 게데 따도 요나네 기다리 깨지 마인데서 그 따도 요라 요래 요 말에 티 따도 요라 맹게지르다 요아 연게지르세거라 게데 따도 요라 연게지나네 네 깨지 마라 와시거라 기다리 깨지 마인데 깨지 맹고 연구레세거라 요아 요나르다 게데 요라 매나네 전도 시안이 칼라 요르세 그때 주로 매바 있는 수도 그때 내가 주로 매나네 전도 안에 라신지 주발이 앞에는 페네 간사를 지내 속볼 때네 슈누레 지바레 겐고레서 어떤데 개바디 요구 말해서 거라 속불잖네 속보대 고투를 치러 두텐지 치러지 된 교환도 되니 슈누다 된데 개바다 된데 요구라 라신지 라신지 지발에 담보 지바체 때네 슈누체 때네 개발라 소바 생이도 요르 말해서 거라 얘도 걔데 따도 주로 여나 따도 주로 맹게 신세라 때네 지다리 깨지 많이 버체 따도 요 매번이나네 근데 걔데 요 매나네 전도 생이 갈려 간사다 부티 르르 때네 아니 지바다 슈누도 개발라 소바 르 요도도 아테 요 누구 말어 왔어라 니티신 나셀 소바테도 강가 요아라 티테로 테졸레드네 요아요 말어 베시거라 테조 강가 요데거라 티데 야 티실라나 디도
So the earlier explanation also included verse number 65, which I'm just going to read. Since abiding does not really occur, ultimately there is neither arising nor cessation. How can something be ultimately produced or ceased or abide in that sense? So that was explained earlier, Rajeshala. So now verse number 66. From here, Nagarjuna engages in refutation of position of some of the realist philosophical schools. The first is here by the Vishishka school of philosophy, non-Buddhist philosophical school, who maintains that, if you who kind of response to the Madhyamikas by saying that if you maintain that things are constantly changing, things arise into existence, things go out of existence and so forth, then all the philosophical kind of refutations that you launched against us, they're all valid, right? But this particular fault does not uh, 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 involve us, because we maintain that the subtlest particles are actually permanent. Not only the particles, subtlest particles are permanent, but they are also indivisible. They can never be further divided, right? So this is basically the refutation of such a philosophical position, right? So it begins by, Nagarjuna begins by saying, so how about that kind of this indivisible particle that you're talking about, right? Is it eternally in change? Is it eternally transforming? So if it is eternally transforming, how can you say that it is not momentary, right? But on the other hand, if you say that the things, this subtlest, particle, indivisible particle, but momentarily, indivisible particle, does it actually momentarily, in the moment, momentarily change or not, right? Ultimately indivisible, but momentarily does it change or not, right? If you say that even there is no momentary change as well, then how can they be change or transformation in the objects, right? We can look at a person is born, right? And then becomes a teenager, and then eventually becomes old and so forth, right? If there is no even temporary change at all, then such transformation is impossible. So if always changing, how could things be non-momentary? If they did not change, how could they be altered, in fact?
So,
No.
yeah, that is the question. And then shunu da kebala so what in the majora tasigora. Ne nega tamje kya ko tirsu bachis, tirsu tade. Takba yene ko tirsu yengwa. Tambu kande ne niba tagaran de ko echikora. Tere Maja Keshe Teresa Tirsu Sera. Rambo Karina ko Tagarante, Nibatil Tagarante Agora, Tirsu Pasera, Tagba Tirsu Sibaris. Tagwe Mingle Tirsu to Yamanashi Chimatella Tirsu Seda. Oh, the Kenshela Sobatinde Jure Yumare Sobo Chanero. Karesako Tirsu was Tambukan Tagate Sera. Tintibacha. Tatane, Otichi Latchane Dimara.
Therefore, the Nagarjuna's argument is that if, in fact, things are not changing, whatever does not change entails that they remain exactly the same at all times, right? So then how can there be any transition or transformation that we see, like a baby becoming old, right? Such kind of observation or perception of phenomena will contradict your idea that things will not change at all.
Oh yeah, what is it that Alcovi? Oh, take can do say. Tamidaba is in a cassette toss and you under Timatoda. Titan Chilo Yaga Kunga Kanga Mayo Chavira. Chilo Tishin Azela Soba the Kanga and you are drum with some tondera. Oh, Ti Duko Cassera. Oh, Tiranda Jigma do some begira. Oh, Nibate Jigna, oh, Jigmedo. Ranshinki to be Tawa Chamit and the Mare. You are tossed your days and joy years and answer. Keji Mara Soba Joy to Serena. And the Takana Joy the Chochi come the Tamje to Sebe Keji Jutana. And you got a Mandawani Mimi said, Tenam Yiga Jindemi. All right, Chochi come the Tamje to Sudo. That today, Takbe Negab Teliarwa. Midabara Kalian Batanasre, Chochi de Chochi comes Dero, and then Chochi Seben Juran Duviarata, Chatamjene could Jurashin and Amatishima Mersene, Jurashin Duviusera, Tamje Joba Duviuse. Chochi come Tamje to Sebe, Amatishen and Judra de Jessica. Sebe Kitchen Jutanas, oh, Cherati Jura Yusena. 네 초질린 주로요벌 시그르다 초 탐제네 권 주한도네 야만나시 마테베세 세바 치마치마 겨들 시기니세 디케치티거라 주차나세 네 메다와니 마미셔 데남 니가 르네 미세 메다와니 마미셔세 데네티디로 뭐뭐 남라 탐제인 주로 계시 나바니서 디 남바니 수제네 지금 말해서라 탐제를 세배 계신 주자네 니가 르바다 되게 말해서 텔레토 말해서 가래서나 뭐보남 치르기 치르 로스 줄바다 체가르 니팅이도 내봐 맨다와 텐다 아텐디도 뭐보다서 강가 카셰는 게 많아신 내지 되게 카셰는 게 많아신 마들 주둥게 근데 니요한테 되게 말했어라 유라연에 참제를 유라여 고그래서 찍바인 고그래서 그래서다 걔는 초지감 탐제도 누가 가려했으나 대니가 견하전이 되게 말했어라 그래서는 유다나 맨자와니 미미셔 네 대남이가 정되면서 그래 이 쇼카 뭐 가셔리아네 유라여셔 처럼 가셔린 유라메고 때부터 니가 되게 말했어라 누가 연한 거 보면 이제 교단 경우 좀 탐지를 누가 그래 누가 매는 이지 가셔 누가 매우실 때요 말때 교단 경우 누가도 그래 뒤 초질이 누가 초질이 누가 매실 때 되게 말했어 넘버 탐지도 거 간대지나 계속 니네 지배랑 시청 교례랑 시청 그래 스테이시도 야 된대도 되지라나
So then the Visheshkas understand that, there is some sort of contradiction that they see in their philosophical position, that the subtlest particles are permanent and indivisible, right? Because if that is the case, then they cannot explain a kind of seeds giving rise to trees and entire forests. They cannot account for change in the seasons, right? And so forth. All the kind of transformation, change that we observe in the world, they cannot explain that, right? They see that. So therefore, they wanted to say that that even though particles are permanent, but we can see the change because some of them have some sort of momentary transition, momentary change, right? So that's why that is the case. So therefore, to that, the response from Nagarjuna is, when you say, there is some sort of momentary change with regard to these permanent particles, what do you mean by that? Do you mean this a kind of particle, subtlest particle, indivisible particle? And do the particles change entirely? That those particles that you say they are changing, or that part of the particles, a part of a particle undergoes change while other part do not actually change? What do you mean by that, right? So therefore, says Nagarjuna further says that, but the position that, this position is, not tenable, to maintain that, particles go partial change or particles go complete change or transformation, right? Because when you look at the particles, we don't observe that, we don't see that, we cannot see that possibility, right? if something is momentary because it either ceases partially or entirely, neither of these two possibilities make sense because a difference is not perceived. So, like a kind of a partial transformation or complete transformation, right? That is basically is something, a kind of possibility that we cannot entertain. Because, any particle, any phenomena, if we look at it, we cannot say, oh, these aspects of the particle did not change while these aspects of the particle changed. We don't observe that. No.
Yeah, Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe Dayan Deshe Dwa, Kamju Bagi Shigdwa, Kamju Kelinge Chirubayora, or the Abdutene Dasre, Kamju de Sadre, the Toma Mevane, Yebe Kibuning Bachi in Sura, Ranshinki Negabla, Tati Nibata Yoma Rese, Nimbakun Jomenge, Kansa Yine and Ko Tawara. Goja Kamju ne Tonda me Toman Dis Yong, Toman Dis Toyake Omar, Toma Mevane Yotenge, Kibu Kansa and Ningbachi Sera. Ningba Ranshinki Nego, La Taka Nibata Bedos, Kitchen Jurgudwe, Chachin Jurgudwe, and Jogmara today, 20 Omar, Kibu Nimba Taba, Ranjungi Kibu Tendeke, Yusera. Oh, that telephone, Lavina telephone, the water, Kapachiktua. Kandachido Sena. Keji Mena, real measures. Keji Mena, real measures. Nova Yena, Kechi Mahinku Dese. Kechi Mahina, round to be Tule, Tu Nibalia, Tawana Megores, Rilbu Megores, Site or Maresora. Kechi Tambo, the Nibal Day or Mara. Tambo, Nibal Day or my Niba Koraya Sabaya Kigara. Or the Kechi Yena remixer. Kechi Mani Chinjatella Kechi Tambo round to do Kechi Nibal Medure, Tambo the Nibal Degmara. Tambo the Nibal Deg, United, Sumbalete, Sibalete, Nabalete. Ningazo Serum Buchara, Puchunjudico, Katina Tagata, Niva Sumba Sibatero Sena, and a co Shambajanchi Tegra. Kechi Yena remixer, Kechi Yena round to do Kechi Nibalia, Tambo the Tawana, Chazam Babacha or Esigora. Tambo de Sigorta. Kechi Yena real measure. And it is Toma Utakurse. Net Toma da Casere. Toma da Uda Tamala Soba, attend the Yoku de Sigora. Kechi Magina. Kechi Mayigola, Kechi Magina, round to the two Nibambetu Vayimbe. Ningaduna Yevamo, the Chiduna, Chazam Megore Sera. Tito Nimba Chayake Yomare Sera. Nimbangaya Takalishi Omaresera. Nimbachai Omares. Kares Sav Savarisra, give a Chanichana Sav Savarisra. Nimbangashi, Nimbangaya Omarese. Today, Tembangobo. Tembangobo in Besane, Kejimana, Tembo, Taba, Dangan, Kejin, you want to get in the Umara. Naduna Nebangobo Chigan, Nebe. Nebangaya, and Meta Nimba Chayasake Marisara. Nimba Jugera. Kichi Nobu Tamje Nebe Nimbangaya Takalashi Yote Nimba La Jure Chavis Nimba Te Omarico Kichi Chanaco Sava Savasera. Nimasan Kechi Tambo the Nibal de Sumbal den and Nimba Chandura. As a Nimba Chaya to go Nimba Sonza, Sava Chavi Vetarawa. Sava Yasava Chigman, Nimba Coronoro Chigmarwa. Talaris in Nimba and Tangaris in Nagucha de Kechi Tambo the Nibal Deg Mesa ko Nimba Chandura, Nimba Sigara Tangaja. Kundi, Kundiko, Tindeteza Chandura. Pisava de Tambo the Nibal de Tegu and Nimba Kona Yomara. This is on the Geshe na real measure and Geshe Tonda Utago, Toma dere Udere Ki dere se, Tendetine Tagoche, maybe some Shandumedo. And the corridor, danger Geshe Minaya, Nimbangada, Galashes. The temple in any Nimbadi Yomasha, get the Tembengobo, a Yena, Tembengobo in Kejima in Benet, Tuna nebe ngobu chiga nebe. Tambo yongedi chema nebe di yonguma te sunda nyingba yonga yomare se. Nyingba takala shi yudu yomare se ra. Yudu.
No.
Nga utaku se. Tenchere kechi minaya nyingba gada kala shi se. Oh. Ina ko tenchere. Tenchere kechi minaya se. Oh, tene keje ma yina ko siba de niba de le ndo saba le gu na tele nyingba sigma de sera tambu je niba de o mara tidu je du yo do o te so ken chere keje yina ya o nyingba gada kala shi se ko tembo je de ne ni nyingba ra chaya shi wara te o mara keje tambu niba so je saba ki go ra Teso chana de nyingba sigba ra sa kechi kishana kona tambu sawa chingi kyara mbato nyingba chiyo mara. Kengo de ngema ne yoba ina, kengo de tambu kidu ne yoba she, kengo she. Intine tewe ina ine ko nyingba taga tewe suru chachora. Tiko sawa chigi she ne kengo chandora. Dimedo, this one, yeah. Akala shiti yoba my no sense. Oh yeah.
So then verse number 68 is basically a position that is maintained by followers of Vishnu who wanted to explain that, there has to be something that is source of everything, that is permanent, right? That is eternally true, enduring, right? And they say that there is such a person, there is such an old person, and namely Vishnu, right? The God, the creator. Because they say that Vishnu is extremely old person, the first in the universe, and also someone who self-originated, Swambhu, right? And old, right? And so therefore, they wanted to maintain this Vishnu as old, primordial, right? No beginning, no end, right? Not caused by anything, self-originating, and so forth, right? So as a counter example to the Buddhist kind of logic that and everything is momentary. So to them, then Nagarjuna says, if Vishnu is the actual entity, right, as opposed to kind of non-entity, something that does not exist. If Vishnu is something that actually exists, is an existing entity, then it should be momentary, right? If a real thing is momentary, then it would cease to exist entirely at each moment. So if it's an entity, causally produced entity, then it will cease to exist in the moment. The definition of momentariness or causally produced phenomena is such that in its in the subsequent moment of it arising, it has to undergo complete transformation, right? So therefore, if that is the case, how can we say that Vishnu is old? Vishnu, by definition, if Vishnu does exist, it's transforming on a moment-to-moment basis. How can Vishnu be old, right? That old, how can Vishnu be primordial, so to speak? But if you say that, even though Vishnu is, momentary, but because Vishnu is stable, firm, enduring, right? And so in that case, we say that he's old, right? The same logical flow applies. And basically, even though something is enduring and, firm, right? If that something is momentary, how can that something be old? It still means that even though that person might have been in existence for a long time as a continuum, but the reality is that at each moment there is a complete transformation, right? So the idea of the old is like, if you say an old person has always been old, yeah, then that is eternal old, right? But, there is no such a kind of old person that, was old at all times, right? Without any transition. An old person is young once and became old. Similarly, even though Vishnu may be enduring, but nonetheless, because he is momentary, there is no such thing as old or primordial or unchanging.
So,
No.
oh yeah, done it down. Diane could shower the shit. Probably should. Kejila, go to so. Kejima, na, she said, I'm going to get you to oh, to shit and it all. Stay on there, chip. Kejima, that Chaji, Tebatambashi. Kejima, in a Chaja in Gurich, Chaja the Chamis, or dinner, and a Kejima, go Chaja in Gurachida. Taco Garcido, Kejima in a Chaja in Gurese. Tell ya. Kejima de Kela Mangaba to Nila. Ke Sarase, Mangaba to Ni, to Nibar Medebe, Medaba, Nila Stako, Kelim Becajeta, and Juachim Becajeta. Kejima Reshasra. Ne Kejima, Kela Mangaba to Nis, Tambo Ke Sarse, Ga Meba de Kejitamburwa. Tini tu Nibar Medeba, to take Mare, to Medaba in his Serata. Medaba in Las. Keji tingi, keji chik rangshinki, neba rangshinki tuba radio rase, tako rangshinki tuba de togu yora toda. Keji medabada re, keji chi ke chatu ti, nibale tegu medu samgora, ta tena kya de thongra, rikba yandara, taas labgyo mara. Keji nibal tegu mara, nibal tegu ni tambo ke chata nibal tena, sumbali te, shibal te pe tena, yuwa zan ruki me chandura. Ko yuran rugi dongo tambo di nipa de me do sere. Ta ina kechi chin do ase de tambo nipa sumba se di rangu ne chuba re, rangshin chuba re do ase di yoyo se gara. Mita bade kailan pa se. Ina ya kechi koran di rangshin ki nepa ino se na se. Ta dila pa ka pa chik do kachi lawe deba ti che ra. Ta dila pa ka se do se na. Kechi ma ina rangi chashe yo gu ra. Chashe yo na. Chida yoba te shindu ne thoma da uda barbaya kele kugre sera. Chidare kechi ta yoba, kechi le tangbo da, kechi tangbo niba, kechi korale chasherab che yogura, tangbo da barba da use chashe che yogure sera. Kechi ma rangi chashe se kyube, chida da uma da barta tende kele kugre sera. Chida yoba te shindu ko Homa de yogure, ude yogure sera. Chidara kechi tayoba, jite, kechi neba, parde yogure, tama de yogure sera. Chidara kechi liya, yoba shindu taya yogure, kiye yogure, parma yogure, chama yogure sera. Jite kechi neba me, tisere kechi sumda sera. Jide kechi neba minsa, 오단 됩니다. 대다 깨지 마랑게 차셔서 주베 깨지 통도 발송 의제 요구래세. 대나 치대 여바신도 담보 요구를 요구래세. 대들도 치대 깨지 타요바 주대 깨지 내바 요구래네 담아대 요구래세. 대실 깨지 숨다니 깨지 마이네 깨지 코로나 담보다 빠르다 타마셔제 깨지 숨기 땅이도 내고래세라. 이러지. 지대 깨지 내가 매세 저는 처음에 무슨 대단히 주진지된 데 깨지 라신기 내가 다디 파 가고지도 될파랑로 가고지서래 기술 깨지 숨다셔래 지대 깨지 내가 매세 랑신 주베 내가 매세 깨지 숨기 땅이 이들 깨지 담보 랑신기 주베 쓰기 내게도 아세 라우르와테 깨지 지 랑신기 주베 내가 쓰기 요 말에서 가르스네 깨지 고란을 차숨 요아래세 차숨을 때는 깨지 마서 찍다고 하라 니무세라 다와세라 차마세라 초주지세 초주니세 깰바세라 그 깨지를 마부요라 깨지를 마부요라 어디 인도상 코가소래 깨지리야 깨지지데 랑원에 두바디 태그 말에서 랑원에 두바이나 콜 차셰 맹게르지 고란지 깨지 담보 데레스 찍장자지 땡큐 요구레티 요 말에서도 치다다 의다 탈라서부터 요구레스 참에 경우고 메시베세 참에 병고 요마도 다 엄마번나 시지기나 차제다 참에 니제 참에 시절 메시라 차다 제바이나 고로버 가시 진님도 손에 진명지 토고요라 그런 차지에 맹게 뒤에 참에 내서 로버지에 메고 지나 네랑원에 두버세 쇼가라 고랑 신기 고라지 두에 근데 뭐 거나 시기요 말에 착하시지 용계지 마도 착하시지 용이 될 때는 같이 따셔가라 어때리죠 참에 경고 메시베시래 뉴주진지된 디 탐제 네 깨지기랑 신기 내봐요 말에 가서 랑그 차셔서 주베 뭐 숨르질 때는 봐 두고 요래서 와 차셔서 주베 깨지 숨기 땅이 전도 두고 그래서 어디실람네 되라 같이 대다께지 타요 반지대 깨지 내 따차숨이요 그래서 차숨 예배 땅이 들가 안에 깨지지 랑원에 두바데 정신지 두바 내바데 연구 말했어 다 된다 차제 연구를 차제 연에 랑원에 두바 연구 말했어 차제 요거도 고란을 깨지를 좀 숨겨요 그래서 야 되질라나 그림에도
Also, verse number 69 is followers Vishnu and other realist philosophical schools coming back to Madhyamikas by kind of thinking that, yes, if we say that, things are not changing at all, things are not momentary, then, there are a lot of consequences, a lot of philosophical contradictions. We couldn't account for change, we couldn't account for growth in the universe, forest, season change, and so forth, right? Old age, and so forth, right? We couldn't explain them, right? So therefore, they wanted to maintain that they still wanted to cling to a notion of something that intrinsically exists, inherently exists. And so now they're saying that, yes, things are momentary, right? But a moment truly exists, right? Just as they wanted to resort to the indivisible particle as the foundation of the intrinsic reality of phenomenal world, like the kind of the first principle, the ground on which they can build like kind of intrinsically existent phenomenal world, or resorting to indivisible particle, they now wanted to also resort to a kind of an indivisible moment, right? There is momentary change, yes, we agree, but a moment is something that is indivisible. A moment is something that inherently truly exists. So therefore, we can maintain that things truly exist in a moment. So there is a momentarily true existing phenomena, because things truly exist for a moment. They arise in the moment, and then they change in the next moment. But the moment is something that is not imputed. A moment is something that truly exists. A moment is indivisible, right? So if they can maintain this position, then they can somewhat maintain a kind of a plausible argument that there is still, even though things are momentarily changing, there is still like intrinsic reality. Still like, intrinsic reality in and out of themselves, on the objects themselves, without our conceptual kind of influence or conceptual imputation or labeling, right? So, so the response is a moment, is not indivisible. A moment can further be divided into 3 moments. For example, a moment has a beginning, a moment has a middle, and therefore a moment has an end. And so therefore, that idea that a moment is intrinsically real without any further division possible is false, because a moment can be divided into further moments, more subtle moments. A moment has a beginning, a moment has a middle, a moment has an end, right? So therefore, a moment is also imputed based on a continuum. Any kind of moment is also imputed based on a continuum that is further divisible into its beginning, its middle, and its end, right? And so therefore, because a moment is also an embodiment of having 3 parts, we cannot say that the world or the aggregate truly inherently exist in an inherently existing moment. So that's verse number 69. Yeah.
뭐야, 고기입니다. 어제들이다. 토마, 의다.
Dit Jos.
왜? 뭐야? 뭐야, 안 했다는데. 늘 없으니까 겁니다. 우리 안 되셔서나.
Okay.
가다 셔서나. 주주 줘서.
Yes. So
우리 다다.
so we're going to stop here due to time.
주주 그 어디시?
Verse number 69.
예. 어디시?
Thank you again, Rinpoche, for these precious teachings, especially on the wheel turning day. And thank you, Dr. Tenzin.
Regular chocolate to juris.
아,
3 chocolate to juris.
예. 어디시들 야부죠.
Tashidele. And thank you, Dr. Tenzin Bhuchung, for filling in for the last 3 weeks. We so appreciate your beautiful translations and really appreciate you stepping in and helping us. So please join us again next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And since this is Dr. Bhuchung's last translation, you'll find information in the chat box of how you may make an offering of thanks for his translations. Thank you so much. And we'll end with some dedications.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Gurana Mandala Kamniryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.
Oh, yeah. What?
Yes,
What?